The first thing I saw when I walked into the school reunion was a woman I had promised myself I would never see again, and the second thing I saw was a man gripping her wrist so tightly that her fingers had gone pale. She was trying to pull away, her face frozen between fear and humiliation, while everyone around them pretended not to notice. I did not know why she had come back into my life after 12 years, and I certainly did not know why her former boyfriend was hurting her in front of a room full of people. But when she looked across the crowded hall and our eyes met, something in her expression broke my heart. She wasn't asking me to save her. She was asking me to remember the person she used to be. So I walked straight toward them, placed my hand gently over his, and said the one thing that changed everything. I told him she was my wife. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who may need hope today, and subscribe to our channel so our family can keep bringing you stories about the moments that change lives. Her name was Camille Rowan, and 12 years earlier, she had been the person I loved most in the world. Back then, we were young enough to believe love could solve anything and stubborn enough to believe we understood everything. Camille had a laugh that made ordinary afternoons feel like celebrations. She loved old bookstores, strawberry pie, and taking long walks through the park even when the weather was too warm. I had been working at a small architectural firm, dreaming of eventually starting my own company, while Camille was studying to become a teacher. We had plans. Real ones. We had talked about a little house with a blue front door, a garden neither of us knew how to maintain, and children who would grow up knowing that home was wherever their parents chose to love each other. Then, 3 months before our wedding, Camille disappeared from my life. There was no dramatic goodbye. No explanation. No final embrace. She simply stopped answering my calls. She returned the engagement ring through her younger sister and left behind a short note saying that I deserved someone who could give me the life I wanted. I spent months trying to understand what that meant. I blamed myself for everything. I wondered whether I had worked too much, dreamed too little, or somehow failed to notice that she had fallen out of love with me. Eventually, I stopped asking questions because there were no answers coming. Years passed. I built the architectural company I had once dreamed about. I bought a modest house with a garden and, just as Camille had predicted, I was terrible at keeping the flowers alive. I learned to live with silence. I learned that sometimes people leave without giving you the dignity of an explanation, and that healing does not mean forgetting. It means learning how to carry what happened without allowing it to control what happens next. Then came the reunion. I almost didn't attend. An old classmate had convinced me that seeing familiar faces might be good for me. The reunion was being held in the bright ballroom of our old school, with sunlight streaming through tall windows and photographs from our graduating year displayed along the walls. I had been there less than 20 minutes when I saw Camille. She looked different, but somehow exactly the same. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, and there was a quiet sadness behind her eyes that hadn't been there when we were young. She wore a simple green dress and stood near the refreshments, holding a glass of water she wasn't drinking. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then someone called her name, and she turned. That was when the man grabbed her wrist. His name was Grant Mercer. I recognized him immediately. He had been older than us at school, confident, popular, and accustomed to getting what he wanted. I also remembered hearing years ago that Camille had dated him after leaving me. What I didn't know was why she had dated him or what had happened between them. Grant leaned toward her with an expression that made my stomach tighten. Camille tried to step away, but he caught her wrist again. She shook her head, clearly asking him to let go. He didn't. I didn't think. I walked toward them, gently placed myself between them, and took Camille's trembling hand. The words came out before I could consider how ridiculous they sounded. I told Grant that his wife was not interested in speaking with him. For a moment, the entire room seemed to stop breathing. Camille stared at me as if I had just spoken a language she had never heard before. Grant looked from me to her and back again. Then he released her wrist. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. He reminded me that Camille wasn't my wife and that I had no right to interfere. I told him that whether I was her husband, her friend, or simply a stranger who had witnessed a woman being frightened, I had every right to ask him to step away. Something changed in his face. He warned me that I didn't know what I was getting involved in. Then he walked away. Camille stood beside me, staring at her wrist. There were red marks where his fingers had been. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but instead I simply asked whether she was all right. She nodded, but tears began filling her eyes. She thanked me for pretending to be her husband. Then she whispered something that made my heart stop. She told me that she had not come to the reunion to see me. She had come because Grant had been following her. For the next hour, Camille told me pieces of the story she had kept hidden for more than a decade. Grant had been controlling when they were together. At first it had been small things, questioning where she went, who she spoke to, and why she needed time away from him. Then it became anger, threats, and intimidation. She had eventually escaped, but Grant had never completely accepted that their relationship was over. And then Camille told me the part one never expected. She had left me 12 years earlier because Grant had threatened me. He had discovered our relationship and told her that if she married me, he would ruin my career, destroy my reputation, and make sure I regretted ever knowing her. Camille had believed him. She had convinced herself that disappearing was the only way to protect me. I could barely process it. All those years, I had believed she abandoned me because she stopped loving me. She had walked away because she loved me enough to make herself the villain in my story. I wanted to be angry. Part of me was. I asked why she hadn't told me. Why she hadn't trusted me enough to let me choose whether I was willing to face the danger with her. She lowered her eyes and admitted that she had been afraid. She had watched her father suffer after years of financial problems and believed that one wrong decision could destroy an entire family. She had thought that if she disappeared, Grant would eventually lose interest. He hadn't. I told her that what she had done had broken me. She nodded. She said she knew. Then she apologized. Not the casual kind of apology people offer because they want forgiveness. Hers was different. It carried 12 years of regret. She told me she had written dozens of letters to me but never sent them. She had followed my career from a distance and learned that I had built the company I once dreamed about. She had seen photographs of my house and wondered whether I had ever planted the garden we talked about. I almost laughed through my tears when she mentioned the garden. I told her I had killed 3 rose bushes and 1 apple tree. For the first time that afternoon, Camille smiled. It was the same smile I remembered. But the reunion did not end there. Grant returned. He stood several feet away and told Camille that she owed him a conversation. I stepped forward, but Camille stopped me. That surprised me. She looked at Grant and told him she owed him nothing. Her voice shook, but she didn't retreat. She told him that he had spent years making her believe she was responsible for his anger, his failures, and his unhappiness. She told him that she was finished being afraid of him. Grant tried to laugh it off. But Camille kept speaking. She told him she had survived him. Then she told him something even more powerful. She said she no longer hated him. Grant looked confused. Camille explained that hatred had kept him in her life for too long. She didn't want revenge. She wanted freedom. There was a long silence. Grant finally walked away. This time, Camille didn't look after him. She looked at me. And I realized that the woman standing in front of me was no longer the frightened young woman who had disappeared 12 years earlier. She had spent those years learning how to stand again. We left the reunion together that afternoon. Not as husband and wife. Not as lovers. Just 2 people who had once loved each other and finally had the courage to tell the truth. Over the following months, we slowly became friends. I learned that Camille had become a teacher and had dedicated her career to helping children who came from difficult homes. She told me that teaching had saved her because every day she spent helping a frightened child feel safe reminded her that she could create the kind of world she once needed. I told her about my company, my terrible gardening skills, and the quiet life I had built. Neither of us rushed. We didn't pretend 12 years had disappeared. We didn't pretend forgiveness erased pain. We simply allowed trust to grow again. One spring afternoon, almost a year after the reunion, Camille came to my house carrying a small wooden box. Inside were the letters she had written but never sent. She placed them on my table. She told me I didn't have to read them. But I did. There were pages about birthdays she remembered, holidays when she missed me, moments when she wanted to call, and ordinary afternoons when she passed a bookstore and remembered how we used to spend hours inside them. One letter had been written on the day she learned that I had started my company. Another had been written when she heard I had bought a house. The final letter was dated only a few weeks before the reunion. It said that she was tired of living as if the past had the right to decide her future. I finished reading and looked at her. I told her that I couldn't give her back the 12 years we had lost. She said she knew. I told her that I couldn't promise that everything would be easy. She said she didn't expect easy. Then I asked her if she would be willing to start over. Not from where we had left off. From where we were now. She cried. So did I. We started with coffee. Then walks. Then dinners. Then weekend trips. Slowly, carefully, we discovered that the love we had once shared had not disappeared. It had changed. It had become wiser, quieter, and stronger because it had survived everything we had believed would destroy it. 2 years after the reunion, I took Camille to the garden behind my house. Most of the plants were still struggling, but one rose bush had finally survived. I told her I had been saving one place for her. She looked at me and laughed through tears. She asked whether I meant the garden. I told her I meant my life. This time, when I asked her to marry me, there was no fear, no threat, no secret, and no reason to run. She said yes. Our wedding was small and held in the afternoon beneath a row of flowering trees. There were friends, family, laughter, tears, and sunlight shining through the branches. When Camille walked toward me, I realized something. 12 years earlier, I had thought love meant never letting someone go. Now I understood that sometimes love means allowing someone the freedom to find their way back. Camille didn't need me to rescue her. She had already rescued herself. I simply became the person standing beside her when she finally realized she no longer needed to be afraid. And perhaps that was the real meaning of the lie I had told at the reunion. When I called her my wife that afternoon, I wasn't claiming her. I was protecting her long enough for her to remember that she belonged to herself. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. And before you leave, tell our community in the comments this: have you ever forgiven someone, not because what they did was painless, but because you wanted to free your heart from the past? Because sometimes the person who breaks your heart isn't meant to be the person who stays away forever. Sometimes they come back carrying the truth. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. Sometimes second chances don't return us to the past. Sometimes they give us the courage to build something better than what we lost. And sometimes, after 12 years of silence, the person you thought had abandoned you is standing in front of you with tears in her eyes, waiting for you to finally understand that she never stopped loving you. She was simply waiting until she was brave enough to come home.